pandemic so that we make life easier for ourselves and for the rest of the nation. I just want to also appeal to all of us it's a question of mindset. If we don't change our behavior and mindset in terms of how to deal with this matter, the situation can get worse. And we might find ourselves even to stage 2 or stage 1. And I know that these are very, very severe restrictions. We don't want to go there. So the best way to do this is to comply and assist government to fight this. And lastly, I just want to also highlight one point about stage 3 restrictions. I think there was a point about businesses or operations that shall be restricted. I think the minister highlighted that. It's also an issue.
Citizens of the country migrated to stage 4 level of restriction under the COVID-19 state of emergency. Rongo region has remained under stage 3 of restrictions put in place for Walvis Bay, Swakopmund and Arandes local authority areas. Areas where community transmission had been established. Given the increasing number and distribution of cases across the country, there is now what I can classify as clustered community transmission, which warrants adjustment to our national level of response. This is consistent with our national response strategy, which is to migrate between stages of restriction depending on the changing situation in the country and our decision to implement targeted and localized responses to contain clustered outbreaks. To suppress further spread of disease as observed in recent weeks and after in-depth study of the current situation, the government has decided to adjust our COVID-19 interventions by migrating the entire country to stage 3 of the COVID-19 state of emergency. Interventions will include targeted measures for specific localities in some parts of the country. Migration to Stage 3 will have bearing on the Tourism Revival Initiative, whose modalities were being worked out in recent weeks. The land ministers will provide more details on these measures as approved by Cabinet. These have not been easy decisions to take, but they are necessary. These have not been easy decisions to take, but they have to be taken because they are necessary. The measures being put in place have one singular objective: to suppress the spread of COVID-19 so as to protect the lives of Namibians. Lives of Namibians. The confirmation of cluster community transmissions is of great concern. I can report. The confirmation of clustered community transmissions is of great concern. Left unchecked, this pandemic will be catastrophic for our country in terms of life loss and increased physical suffering due to illness. We are aware that the economy is hurting, and this is why we cannot afford to take these measures lightly. All of us must play our part in the interests of our families, communities, and the nation at large. Let us take personal responsibility to adhere to all measures for the good of our health, of our economy, and our future. None of us should do anything that will aid the spread of the virus in our country. The increasing numbers should remind us all that it is up to each and every one of us to make a difference. It's not only government's duty, it's not government police to try to ill-treat people, but please, why must you be told, don't do it? It's a serious situation. Why must the police tell you not to run around or to go and drink and misbehave? People are dying. So we don't have to beg you. It's our own safety we're talking about. So please, let's hold hands. But this trying to escape, to travel out, to go and dance, go to parties, as if it's a normal time. That is not okay. People are dying. We are going to die. So why must we beg you, please? Why must we beg you? It's your own life we're talking about. The life of Namibian people. So please, I'm begging, I'm pleading with you that this loose and careless way of going out to drink, the parties, and also we are people who respect our funerals. But funerals, churches, nightclubs, these are areas where we are spreading the disease. So please, I'm appealing again. We don't have to tell you that it's a disease that's going to affect all of us. And now in Namibia we are seeing that people are dying. If in the past we had only one death, we thought we were immune to death. Now we can see people are dying. So I now call upon the Minister of Health to outline the measures. Please listen very carefully. They are serious measures. Has to outline the measures that will come into force from midnight tonight, Wednesday, 12th August 2020, for a period of 16 days until 28th August 2020. I thank you, Minister.
Excellency the Vice President, honorable ministers, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. The presence of COVID-19 is being felt in all parts of our country. COVID-19 is not only causing illnesses, it is claiming precious lives of our citizens. As stated by His Excellency, the number of COVID-19 cases in our country has increased exponentially in recent weeks, with cases reported from all over the corners of Namibia. It is a fact that the virus does not move or spread by itself. It is moved and spread by people. It spreads when, in the absence of complying with the precautions, an infected person moves from one place to another and gets into contact with other persons and infect them. These infected persons, failing to observe precautions, then go on and infect others, and the chain grows longer and longer. In order to arrest the spread being observed in recent weeks, the current COVID-19 state of emergency regulations will be adjusted as announced by His Excellency. I now proceed to outline the details of the newly approved measures as part of our national strategy to combat COVID-19 in our country. The measures as approved by Cabinet are as follows. 1. All 14 regions of the country will revert to or remain on stage 3 level of restrictions under the COVID-19 state of emergency for a period of 16 days from midnight Wednesday, the 12th of August 2020 until midnight 28th of August 2020. This countrywide migration to stage 3 shall take into account all additional measures approved by Cabinet subsequent to the provisions in Proclamation number 21 of the 1st of June 2020, which brought into being stage 3 regulations. The additional measures as later approved by Cabinet shall also apply. The measures currently applicable to the local authority areas of Walvis Bay, Swakopmund, and Arandes are now applicable to the City of Windhoek local authority area, including Okahanja and Rehoboth local authority areas for a period of 16 days. Travel into and out of these restricted local authority areas to the rest of the country will be restricted to emergency situations only, as defined in the regulations. Any person leaving the restricted area, apart from critical and essential service providers, will be quarantined at own cost upon arrival at destination. Drivers of vehicles delivering critical and essential services traveling from the restricted area will be quarantined as per the existing applicable modalities. Although travel will be permitted within the country, with the exception of the restricted local authority areas, the public is cautioned against unnecessary travels. In order to decongest densely populated informal settlements, the Ministry of Urban and Rural Development shall identify facilities and venues where residents can be temporarily relocated. Local authorities shall ensure availability of water and ablution facilities at these temporary relocation centers. Trading hours for the sale of alcohol are 12 to 18 hours Monday to Friday, and from 9 to 13 on Saturdays. No sale of alcohol is permitted on Sundays and public holidays. No movement of person will be permitted in the restricted areas between 20 hours to 05 hours daily during the specified period, unless such person is in possession of an authorizing permit as an essential service provider. To enforce this regulation, checkpoints will be introduced at specified locations within the city of Windhoek and on the parameters of the restricted areas to control movement. Face-to-face classes for grade 10, 11, and 12 scholars will continue. Where applicable, learners should stay in the hostels to limit exposure, provided there is no risk of infection at the school. Tertiary education institutions, that is, vocational education training providers, colleges, and university, to revert to online teaching and learning for the bulk of their student population groups that allow adherence to the set health protocols. Early childhood development centers, pre-primary and primary grades 0 to grade 9 remain closed and are to continue teaching via alternative modes of instruction. Across the country, public gathering will be limited to 10 persons, including weddings, funerals, and religious gatherings. The issuance of permits for travel from and to restricted areas to attend social events, such as weddings and church events, is strictly prohibited. However, permits will be issued for travel to attend funerals of immediate family members, that is, a spouse, a parent, sibling, and children. All persons traveling from high-risk areas, including the restricted areas, will be required to submit a mandatory supervised quarantine, for a period of 7 days upon arrival at their respective destinations. Restaurants in the restricted areas shall operate under Stage 2 regulations, that is, on a takeaway basis only. Restaurants in other parts of the country may operate under Stage 3 regulations. It should be noted, as per Stage 3 regulation, that nightclubs, gambling houses, and casinos are not permitted to operate. Employers should encourage employees and people who meet the criteria of vulnerable persons to work from home as far as possible. Expanded targeted testing will be conducted in the City of Windhoek local authority areas and further to other selected areas depending on epidemiological trends. The Ministerial Coordinating Committee will convene as a matter of urgency to consider the implementation modalities for the recently approved Tourism Revival Initiative and operating modalities for restaurants, which recommendations will be tabled for Cabinet's consideration. All points of entry and cross-border movement of persons remain closed, with the exception of the transportation of imported goods. We are now at a critical stage. The public must strictly adhere to the regulations and health and hygiene protocols, which are our first-line defense. The law enforcement agencies must enforce these measures. Members of the public must wear a mask at all times in public places, must maintain social distancing, must avoid crowded public gatherings, and must avoid unnecessary travel to and from different parts of the country. The Ministry of Health and Social Services and the Ministry of Education will intensify the dissemination of public service messages to educate the public about the dangers of COVID-19 and how our people can prevent its further spread. We are standing at a critical point. What we do now will determine the trajectory of this pandemic in our country. To prevent further spread of the virus demands utmost discipline in all our action, whether at home, whether at work, or in public space. I thank you.
Yes, let's open the floor to follow up on what we have submitted to you. Is there anybody not? I thought legal people, you didn't prepare yourself. Tell us legal things.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I'm not sure whether there are legal things when it comes to health matters, but just to re-emphasize a few matters that I think are important. When we talk about the various stages, we want to emphasize a number of the issues. If you would remember, when we talk about stage 3, there are the requirements under that stage that we must continue to wear masks, and the wearing of masks, Your Excellency, I want to emphasize, is that it must be over your nose, cover your mouth, and under the chin. And that's how you should wear your mask consistently. I think it's important for people to know that. For people who are using reusable masks, you should only, such as the one that I'm wearing, once you have left the space where you find yourselves and you're back home, you should discard of the mask in a certain way. I know that the Health Ministry has made arrangements of how that should be done. So it's important for people to do that. The second thing is for people who are using, I got a little bit confused about the mask. The reusable masks are the ones that most people use that have material. Those ones you must wash every day when you go home, and these disposable masks are the ones that you should discard. You should only really use it one time. And the manner in which we discard of the mask is also important. I find that people continuously touch the mask on the front part. That's really where corona apparently is. So I think people must avoid continuously touching the mask on the front part. If you want to take it off, either during the time that you're eating or drinking something, it's important that you take your mask off from the back of your ears and put it aside. You should also not take off your mask and put it on the table where you are eating, and also expose other people to the potential that there could be corona on it. So please, when you are washing it, the suggestions are that you do it in very, very hot water, and that you add a little bit of jik if you can, or other detergents that you may have access to, so that you ensure that any viruses or on it would be killed by those chemicals. So it's important that you use your mask correctly. I continue to see, Your Excellency, that people still take off the mask when they are talking to other people. That is exactly the time that you should keep your mask on. It's very, very important. So please do not take off your mask the moment you are in a public space. You should actually continuously wear your mask when you are in a public space. The second aspect, of course, is the issue of continuous sanitation. And I think the Ministry of Health would probably have to do something about the kinds of sanitation that is being used, particularly at shops and so forth. I think if members of the public experience that the kinds of sanitizers that are being used are not good for your skin and so forth, that those kinds of matters must be reported to the relevant ministries. This is important because we have had reports, at least my office has had reports, where people have had allergy reactions because of the kinds of sanitizers that are being used. It is our responsibility as members of the public to report any incidents of discomfort that you experience as a result of the kind of sanitizers that are being used. Also, if there is no availability of sanitizers, for example, at the entrance of a shop, it is your responsibility I would suggest that you call the manager of that place and ask them to provide sanitizers for you to go in there. That is another reason why I believe the Ministry of Health can ask an institution or a business to be closed if they don't comply with the health protocols that we have in place. So it's important that members of public are vigilant and that they let us know about incidents where people are not complying with the health protocols. Of course, it's important that we continue to social distance. What we find, apart from the fact that we have now quite significantly reduced the number of public social gatherings. And I want to emphasize public because we do maintain the exceptions in instances where members of the public gather at the workplace, where people gather at court, where people gather in queues, and also when members of cabinet or parliament meet for their normal business. Those ones are not restricted to the number 10. Any other public gathering is reduced to the number 10. Now, when people meet in those public spaces, we do actually mean when we say social distance. Now, there has been a very a false impression created that if you're wearing the mask, that you can then socialize quite closely to other people. You must maintain all of them. It is all three together that is the requirement for the health protocol. So you must wear your mask, you must sanitize continuously or every now and then, and you must maintain at least as a minimum the 1 meter or at most at least 2 meters between yourself and someone that is particularly not from in your same household. And when we say same household, we mean people who live together regularly. What we find is that family members, when they're meeting in malls or at other gatherings or in a queue at an ATM, forget to socially distance and they hug each other without knowing. And I'm happy to see that people are already complying with the regulations by sanitizing their hands as they're sitting here with us. Thank you for showing that kind of example to other members of the public. Is that what we are saying is, if you do not regularly, every day live with someone, you should maintain social distancing, even if they are a family member of yours. That means if you pop in at your mom's house or at your auntie's house to say hello, you should keep your mask on and you must maintain social distancing. We do want to also emphasize the fact that the issue around curfew is important. It means when you, a curfew means that you are not allowed to move between 20 hours, that's 8 p.m. in the evening, and 05 hours in the morning. That means you must not leave your place, except for people who are doing essential work, critical work. I am assuming people who read the news at NBC would be expected to only leave, but you must have a permit that shows that that is the work that you'll be doing, so that when you are found as you are driving home after 8 o'clock or at 9 o'clock, that you have permission to be on the street. That means for everyone else, that does not fall in the category of essential work and that does not have a permit that proves that they're essential or critical workers, it means that you must ensure that you are at home by 20 hours. That means you must make sure that from 1 minute to 8 o'clock, you drive into your gate. If you can do it way before so that you don't have to rush, that's what we would expect. So please, let's try and minimize the movement. In fact, we want to reduce it significantly so that we don't have footprints of corona moving around, particularly in these restricted areas. So it's important for people to understand that. Your Excellency, I want to pause here, and I know that there will be a number of questions and that we will deal with. I know there's been issues, and maybe I should deal with that real quick. There was a question around what we should do about people who are believed to be spreading the virus deliberately and in some instances negligently, and we know about the incidents of people partying while they had gone for tests. The rule is, and I have been subject to that as well. I was at the launch, I may as well say this, I was at the launch of the JP's book, and subsequent to that launch, we were advised that one of the organizers had tested positive, and it is public knowledge, and that's why I'm able to say it. And when that news came out, I had myself also self-isolated. I had gone for a test, and last night I was actually advised that my test had come out negative. The idea really is, once you subject yourself to a test for the coronavirus, it is expected normally some of the protocols that you will get when you go to the testing center, and I was tested at the Robert Mugabe one, is that as part of the completing of the forms, they will ask you whether you are in a position to self-isolate. In other words, are you staying in a space where you will not interact with other people and or that other people will not get exposure? They will also tell you that you must, if you are not able to self-isolate, they will then suggest to you that you can be isolated at the state-identified quarantine facilities. If you prove to them that you can self-isolate, the expectation is that after the test, you drive home and you remain in self-isolation until your test results come out. I think that protocol is actually the protocol that is provided for by the health officials at all of the testing centers. So I think people must understand that apart from the fact that you take personal responsibility for ensuring that you do not spread the virus any further, other people that get in contact with you also have a responsibility to ensure that they comply with the health protocols. In other words, the expectation is, apart from the fact that somebody may be knowingly or unknowingly continue to spread the virus, the people who get in contact, when you go to a function, you must also ensure that you remain with your mask on, that you keep social distancing, and that you ensure that you have met the requirements for sanitizing. So it is only, and so what we have done consistently as a government, Your Excellency, and I'm rounding up, is that we have done two things. We have tried to avoid a punitive approach to dealing with the coronavirus. We have used the state of emergency regulations as broad guidelines to manage the coexistence of Namibian people as we are facing this very difficult time and this pandemic. And it's therefore important that people understand that it is not our intention to unnecessarily punish people. It is our intention to encourage our society to take responsibility for what is going on. So if it is found that you have acted in a manner that is not in compliance with the requirements, there are offenses and penalties set out. We must understand that whether it is something that will be placed in these regulations, the other requirements of the law continues to operate. So if you act unlawfully, if you act intentionally or negligently, those requirements will continue to apply in your instance. It is difficult for people to, for example, say that just because somebody that was positive was at a function, it may not necessarily be that person that has caused other people to have gotten the disease. What we need to always establish in law is a causal link between somebody acting in a certain fashion and another person suffering a damage as a result of that. So it's important that we understand when we are calling for people to be punished, people, that we should ensure that these kinds of behavior should be punished. We must also understand it within the context of the rule of law. So I want to pause there and just say that we are doing what we can as a government to ensure that we combat, prevent, and control the further spread of the virus. And these are the measures that we have put in place, but we trust that the individual members of our society take necessary steps to play their part in the manner in which we are managing this process. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Well,